As designers, we like to think we have an ethics code. Dieter Ram has a list of principles for good design, and a lot of us love to point that list out. But there are designers that might not want to, but have to follow a certain way when designing a site, or a store layout, or even city planning. Sometimes they might not even know what they're doing, or they're being lied to about the impact of what that one design element might be doing to a person, to a community, to a nation. And I know I'm a little late to the party about dark patterns in design, but this is that designer guy. It wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't go way too hard into how dark patterns have not only shaped the web that we know today, but also society. Because while it's called dark patterns when talking about web design, this isn't a new thing. It's been around way before the internet, and it's changed societal patterns, cities, and even the way we purchase in big box stores. This iceberg goes deep. So today we're going to talk about what a dark pattern in design actually is, how it's used online, how your psychological mindset and biases are manipulated to make you fall for these patterns, and zoom out to see how dark patterns are used to segregate communities and how it preys on people with certain vulnerabilities. Dark patterns shape us in ways that are dystopian, because the whole purpose of dark design is to control you without you knowing you're being controlled. From purchasing items on Amazon to buying skins in Fortnite, to understanding why certain roads are built when going into communities, dark design, dark patterns are everywhere. And while some of us can see certain ones, the majority of them go unnoticed. And that's the scariest part of all, because they're working. Hopefully you're ready for this, because I wasn't. But first, quick shop talk here. I started a site where you can see all my videos from all the different platforms, and in case you're wondering what I actually use to make these videos, or the products featured in these videos, I have a complete list with hopefully up-to-date links to every product I use, from camera equipment, software, and audio to whatever I might list in this video. Anyway, back to the video. So most people talk about dark patterns in marketing terms, and while it's heavily influenced by marketers, it does take a designer, and surprisingly a good designer, to lay it out on a site in a way that doesn't seem like it's taking advantage of you. In the end, for a lot of consumer-focused platforms, it's not about the ease of use, it's about the misdirect, scare tactics, and predatory measures big corporations utilize to keep you paying. So what exactly are dark patterns? Well, dark patterns are manipulative design techniques used by websites and apps to trick users into making choices they might not have made otherwise. The goal? To benefit the company, often at the expense of the user's best interests. The most common dark patterns you'll see are disguised ads, hidden costs, roach motels, misdirects, forced continuity, among other ones. I'm going to break down the ones that matter the most because they're pretty devious. A disguised ad sometimes looks like this. Now you might think about clicking on the first link or even the list of cars until you notice something. Sponsored text right there and there and there. What is that? Well, they're ads. Now they might say sponsored, but these are disguised ads because they look like regular Google search results. You'll actually have to scroll past the full, this thing right here, the point where you stop seeing information on screen to see non-ad items, and even further past the people also asked to see actual information other than ads or a direct product site. This is kind of bad because now search isn't about SEO, it's about pay-to-win tactics. Yes, you still have to tag correctly and know SEO, but the best SEO marketers can't compete with purchased ads. But even less direct are the ads in social media posts, like scrolling through a popular content creator and watching a video with a weirdly placed product until you see it's sponsored, and don't get me started with websites with multiple download buttons. Which one is the actual download button? I guess you gotta start clicking. Now, why do they do this? They're designed to look like it goes with the site's overall design, because we're all trained by now to see ads and know what an ad is. So marketers and designers have learned and evolved to make more deceiving ads. If you remember back in the day where some magazines or newspapers had advertorials where it looked like an article on the page, but instead it was just one big advertisement, it's kind of the same thing. Infomercials do this now, and even political propaganda does this to make short-form videos that look like news reports. Do you ever see a clip of two people talking with what looks like a news background, but you don't actually see the logo of the news channel? That's probably not real. Hidden costs are another strategy marketers and corporations use to make you purchase something above the cost that was originally advertised. These costs include additional fees or charges that are finally shown well into the purchasing process. The whole idea is you're too far along in creating an account, and putting in your information to back out. So if something costs $100 initially but winds up costing $175 when you're finally ready to hit submit, you'll do it anyway because you don't want to research something else and you don't want to do the process all over on another site, so you just kind of purchase it. You'll also see this for certain services where they list a basic premium pro plan with a bunch of bullet points but no price. You have to make an account or try for free, or you have to give them some information via a click-through process until you see the final price. And even if it's too much and you back out, well, now they have your email at the very least. Your full name, phone, and address at the most. And of course, unless you click that do not accept cookie button, they kinda have your surfing information with ad tracking implemented into your browser now. Again, this was designed this way so they gather as much information as they can by hiding the cost behind bad UX design, but bad UX design with a purpose. But don't think websites are the only ones that do this. Dealerships love to give you hidden costs, and I bet a lot of you have gone through this if you've purchased a car anywhere from 2020 to right now. Yeah, I'm betting still today. You see a car advertised for $24K online. You go to the dealership and all of a sudden you're purchasing vehicle registration with fees, sales tax, documentation with fees, and those are just the mandatory fees. Then you have what I like to call the bulk fees, like dealer prep, shipping, market adjustments, dealer installation options, and advertising fees. Pretty soon, that 24K SUV you're trying to pick up is 35K out the door. Same tactic, but even worse because you're in that dealership. They have you in that showroom, and they're betting you've been to a few dealers. You're tired, you just need that car. What's an extra 10K, right? But let's go back to that service you just purchased. What if it wasn't a one-time buy? You might be paying monthly or yearly for that service, or even getting a bunch of emails that are kind of relevant but not necessarily relevant to that product. And if you ever want to stop that service or stop getting those notifications, you tend to find it's hard to cancel. It's not because the designer is bad at what they're doing. On the contrary, they're designing that mechanic so that every step of the way, roadblocks are put in place so you second guess that decision, or just give up due to frustration. This is commonly called a roach motel. Easy to get in, impossible to get out. An example people like to use is how easy it was to subscribe to the New York Times, but difficult to cancel, where they actually made users call customer service to cancel, and of course they were put on hold for a longer than probably required period of time. New York Times. Adobe legendarily sends you a bunch of junk mail. If you don't know about Adobe, they have a very unpopular subscription service that designers are kind of tied to if they want to use industry-leading creative tools. Their suite of design programs, from image manipulation to desktop publishing to web design and video production. Since the service requires you to be always online, a lot of times when you open an application up like Photoshop, you might get an email or newsletter about new features in Photoshop. That's kind of creepy, they're watching you like that. But more importantly, they send you individual newsletters for every application you rent. If you get the whole suite, that's a lot of emails. Sure, sometimes this might be helpful, but if you unsubscribe from it, you're not actually unsubscribing from everything, just Photoshop. No, you have to find the link that makes you unsubscribe to all Adobe newsletters, because for every application they have a newsletter for it. That's kind of insane, right? But again, it was designed that way. This leads me to the next thing, the misdirection that marketers use to make you purchase an item or add more cost to a product that you didn't want. Take airline services, for example. I've used their apps a few times, and they utilize colors for certain buttons to make the hierarchy seem more important than others. So see how once you pick your ticket, a secondary item is listed but not added to the final total, and how there's gray text right under that which says purchase summary will be available at the end of the check-in experience. This is partially Roach Motel, hidden cost, and hidden ads all in one image right here. Insane. But the big misdirect is using a different color to make the user think it's the logical next button to see that summary. If you read it, pay for selection now, means it's going to add both items to your bill, while the no thanks, continue checking in, will forego that extra cost. The red matches the logo of the brand itself and is used to create a hierarchy. Just like hierarchy in a book, you have an H1, H2, and a paragraph. We've been taught that the larger or bolder the text, the more important it is. H1 usually starts a chapter, while an H2 may signify breakout groups in the chapter, and paragraphs is the body text. So a gray box usually means a secondary, while a bold or colored box means next or complete. In a way, they're making the gray box invisible to your eyes. And it can be seen in the real world too. Look at end caps at a grocery store. They usually put an item that is highly visible at the end of each aisle. These are designed to test out new products or sell a product that hasn't been selling well. Also, items like milk, eggs, meat, and bread are all in different sides of the grocery store. I mean, think about the layout that you have to travel for most grocery stores. Milk is always in the back, eggs are usually on one side while meats are on the other side. This is so you have to travel the entire store to get the most common items, and guess what? Those end caps are there as well to make you impulse buy. Grocery stores are intentionally misdirecting you to what you actually need. It would be easier to group the most purchased items together, but they don't. Dark patterns. That's been happening for a long time. Now, there are other forms of dark patterns. Dark designs like messing with your purchasing habits. Take Amazon for example. When you go to a product page, usually there's something listed showing items that would go best with your product. And instead of just linking to that storefront, they have the product you originally wanted listed with a picture of a product that goes best with it and an add to cart button. They're hoping you just purchase all the items in a bundle instead of looking at competing products that might be cheaper. Another thing Amazon likes to do is show you lists for deal of the day, which shows a product with a discount and there's a timer attached to it. Now, for some older people watching this video, that might seem very similar to the weekly flyer you used to get in newspapers, but instead of a week, you have a day. The point is, there's an arbitrary time limit on how much you can save for that product. Now, for most of us, that might not be an issue. We see it and it's something we don't need, so we ignore it. But unlike the coupon, these are tailored based on our search history or purchases. So while we don't need that item, it might pair well with an item we already have. This preys on FOMO, something that is very real in this current generation of consumers. Now, before I go on, here's the hard part. I want you, yes you, to tell me in the comments if this stuff actually works on you. Not just for Amazon, but any site or any box store, because it has for me, and even me knowing what they're doing, it still works. Like I said in the beginning, this goes against every design rule designer has been taught, and this is never done by accident. This is designed with a purpose, but it's manipulative design because it's not meant to be good for you, it's meant to be good for the person behind that site. But sites are just a tipping off point. Your entertainment is kind of doing it too.
A new study from UCLA says that Facebook tricked kids and their parents into spending money on the social media platform.
You know, Call of Duty Mobile, I think had something like 250 million downloads, several billion dollars in revenue.
The two biggest video game makers in America now make most of their money not from people buying games, but on subscriptions and spending within those games.
That Facebook wouldn't try to block kids from spending money because it would reduce revenue.
Now, I mentioned a lot of e-commerce sites and even physical stores, basically goods and services that you pay for. While they're deceiving you, at least you get something physical from it and you know what you're getting. But those tactics are also being used in video games, usually mobile games, but we've seen it in large, full-priced console or PC games too. While the graphics are different, the hook is always the same. Flashing or animated icons, obnoxious pop-ups, and hard-to-find cancel buttons. Countdown timers, deals of the day, FOMO tactics. A free-to-play game can sometimes cost you thousands of dollars without you even noticing. They're not necessarily designed for good gameplay, they're designed to be addictive, but not time spent addictive, money spent addictive. It's a slot machine with a game mechanic attached to it. It's gotten to the point where, at least on the iPhone, if you want to play a game without these predatory design elements, you have to pay monthly. Another service that Apple hopes you forget to cancel to play any type of game that doesn't have microtransactions. If you look at most UI on a free-to-play game's main menu, and sometimes even full-price games, it looks like a mess. So many icons, so many animations, there is almost no hierarchy, and everything is littered on the edge of the screens. But there's always one button, icon, or pop-up that is larger, brighter, more distinct than all the other buttons. This is to make you click because it probably goes to a gotcha mechanic, which is like a slot machine that is never in your favor. It might even go to a page that lets you buy in-game currency with real money, so you can use those slot machines. And interestingly enough, those end pages are usually the most well-designed pages for the entire game. This is UX and UI designers making your digital space easier to use and be more addictive. And this is especially dangerous for someone with a gambling addiction. And don't think the designers, or at least the person that told the designer to design that way, doesn't know that. Don't think corporations haven't spent millions on studies, psychiatrists, or trial and error tactics. Whenever you hear about these giant budgets being spent on a product, this is probably a big part of it. Remember when I talked about FOMO for that time limit thing? Yeah, this is a tactic marketers and designers use a lot, and it's kind of effective. While it doesn't work on everyone, there is a sect of people that are very vulnerable to these tactics. A lot of science goes into design, especially when building a website. Analytical data, past experiences, science and psychology goes into UI design and UX design a lot. Famously, HubSpot utilized color theory to raise click rates by 20% just by turning a button from green to red. Now, since red is said to raise heart rates for some reason, people clicked on that red button 20% more than when it was green. Trust and believe web designers are using this data to build more addictive sites and applications. That's why icon notifications are usually red. I mean, look at your phone. Look at any social media app. What color are those notifications, those icons? It's a rush. It's a raise in the heart rate. Your dopamine levels go up, and usually if you don't get enough actual notifications, they'll make it up, like this one person you follow made a new post, or you might like this person that you don't follow. But why do this? Your attention is the most valuable commodity a website or application could want. They keep you on the site, they get more of your data and make money on micro purchases, but most of all, a lot of this stuff is sold to data brokers. That's why you get ads based on things you search for on sites you go to. It's how Instagram knows what type of ads to feed to you, so while the service is free, trust and believe Zuck is getting paid for your scrolling through those images and interacting with people. But this is where it gets evil. I alluded to it earlier, but there's a group of people that this preys on, and they know and target these people because it works. Now, I'm going to start off this section by saying the mind is a very complicated organ. It can do wonderful things, but it can break or reshape itself in ways that can be a nightmare to some. I know this is a hot topic for society in general, but I'm going to talk about how some people with certain mental conditions are more vulnerable to these tactics than other people with not that mental condition. I'm not saying anyone is better because they don't fall for these tactics, but I am saying these companies know how to interact with these conditions to get what they want out of you. In case some of you don't know, neurodiversity was coined in 1990 by Judy Singer, although Harvey Bloom may have been the first one to actually coin that name. Neurodiversity kind of encompasses the diversity within the brain, and that some people are wired differently than others. Usually goes hand in hand with autism, but not always. This is way beyond my scope, so please let me know what I got wrong in the comments. But why am I bringing this up? Well, a lot of these sites directly target these type of people, and it works. For example, someone with ADHD might buy an entire set of dishware or a living room set even if they couldn't afford it. It's just something they need to do, and sites love to have items that are similar or go with that one item linked right next to it, or a pop-up that says something like, you should consider this item as well. And remember when I talked about the countdown timer? Well, if someone gets panic attacks or has FOMO, that countdown clock is a real pressure point for someone like that. But even if you're not neurodivergent, marketers use biases that you might not even know you have to make you interact or purchase an item. A lot of marketers use your cognitive bias with design to make you purchase something or make you agree or disagree with something. A cognitive bias is a systematic pattern of deviations from normal or rational and judgment thoughts. Whether you believe this or not, cognitive biases are a real thing, and designers and marketers use a lot of different tactics to make you purchase something or direct you to navigate to a page in a certain way because of them. One of them is sometimes called cognitive load, which is basically where you can only hone in on a few items at a time. Like, think about Netflix when you want to watch something but you have way too many choices and you have no idea what to watch because you're overloaded. On the exact opposite of that is Apple. You'll notice the site breaks down everything. Instead of seeing a list of products, the site uses groups, so you have to click on Mac or iPhone to see the product, and they use a horizontal slider instead of a page with a large info dump of products. Apple understands that if they have too many products on the page, you might not know what to click on and may leave the page. But this way, your eyes focus on one product at a time and you don't get overwhelmed. That's why listicles were so popular back in the day, and I think still are. Another thing is called the bandwagon effect. Say you see a product being sold and you're not sure about it, but you see a bunch of reviews right on the product page. Now, some of these may be real reviews, but I bet a lot aren't. But because you see a bunch of people using it or leaving 4 to 5 star reviews, along with seeing influencers using the product, which they usually get for free, and sometimes paid, maybe not always, but sometimes, You decide to get it without really knowing if it's any good or not. You also may have heard the term follow the leader, which goes hand in hand with influencers now. This is why there are always reviews close to the product or right next to that purchase button. These are design elements made to make you feel like you're doing the right thing. Blind spot bias is if you ask someone how biased they are. They say they're less biased. Like for example, say you're signing up for a service, you get 3 months free or a free add-on. You tend to be more biased towards that service because you're getting essentially a kickback. Like joining a gym and you get a water bottle, shirt, and yoga mat for free. You tend to stay with that place longer because you got a bunch of free stuff. But it might be a more expensive place, it might not even be the best place you can go to, but because you got that free stuff, you tend to stay with them and look past all that other stuff. You'll see it in reviews sometimes where the product isn't the greatest, but the customer service was astonishing, so they give them a higher review than maybe they should. Or people will use word of mouth, get other people to use a service, especially if the person persuading the other person gets something in return. Now, I'm not sure if they still do it, but Dropbox would give you more space if you persuaded someone else to use their service. Now, this can be used with other psychological traits like mirroring neurons, for example. Those are brain cells that fire when a person performs an action or observes someone else performing the same action. We act and feel on what other people are doing. That's why a lot of advertisements use people smiling or being happy. Look at all the pharmaceutical drug commercials, which if you're not located in the United States, it's probably a really crazy concept you're hearing right now. But every one of those commercials are happy, active, or just living life. Our mirroring neurons tend to see that and think if we use that product, we'll feel and act the same way. Color theory is a huge psychological red flag. Believe it or not, color is a huge deciding factor in purchases, navigation, or moods. We react emotionally to color. Look at how we act to these colors. We kind of know what these colors represent in terms of holidays, but depending on what you like, some of these colors might be more nostalgic for you, they might be more happy, they might be more sad to you. I mean, we've even separated what you're assigned at birth with colors. Colors are very powerful for us. Certain colors evoke purchasing or how to navigate a website. Look at most hyperlinks, they're blue. A lot of buttons are blue. Notifications are red. These colors are all designed to make you do or feel something. But dark patterns are used in many other ways. They've all been carefully crafted to trick users into doing something or acting certain ways without them knowing. And when that is connected to city planning and city design, you get something extremely evil. Odds are if your town is separated by a highway or you have certain architecture that is kind of strange, your town might be based on dark patterns. From highway infrastructure to where bus stops are located, your city or town design may have been built to segregate not just race, but also certain classes of people. This is usually so hidden, you don't notice what's happening until generations into that community. And if you ever wanted to fix it, it's almost impossible because of the infrastructure that's in place. Look at planning zones for neighborhoods. Take Mount Laurel in New Jersey, for example, famous for an exclusionary zone attempt. They didn't want lower to lower middle class people in their town, so they would not allow development of smaller homes or trailers on lots. The New Jersey Supreme Court ended this practice, but some exclusionary zoning hasn't been stopped, and it's thanks to dark patterns and dark design it hasn't been. And let's face it, the damage has been already done. If you're looking for homes or lots in that location, you're seeing $500K and up. This is still out of the range for a majority of people. Most people don't understand zones in towns. They just see streets and expensive houses. Yes, you can go to city hall meetings or look up zoning plans, but again, the majority of people don't understand or know they can do this. Another example is in predominantly white neighborhoods of the past, cul-de-sacs were created to get away from large or major highways and noise. However, low-income houses were split because of new highways, which also housed industrial zones, which caused lower land value, pollution, and water contamination. Like dark patterns, zoning is invisible by design, but we need to go even further back to see the ramifications of city planning and how it is meant to control its citizens. Consider the father of planning, which I am not going to say this dude's name, from ancient Greece, was the main reason most cities are designed within a grid system. We all think a city grid system is designed to help us navigate a city easier and help promote equality because all blocks are kind of shaped and sized equally. But there is a dark pattern to these grids. Jill Grant from the Department of Environmental Planning in Nova Scotia College of Art and Design said there are dark sides or dark patterns to grids for power and control. It's even said that Romans used grid systems to integrate conquered people into their culture for one. And in 1850, Emperor Napoleon III hired a designer to build grand boulevards throughout Paris's densely populated neighborhood, so those people could not hold civil protest or armed uprisings. The wide streets would enable the military to easily navigate through the city and not allow people to erect barricades or fortifications in an uprising. But ultimately, grids were used when creating red lines. From 1938 to 1968, the federal government limited home ownership for African Americans and immigrants via redlining via grades A to D, where A was the most desirable area and D were high-risk investments for environmental quality and industrial centers. But they also labeled foreign-born and people of color into that D system. These districts were part of the grid system, and it was very easy to reshape, move, and build around these districts. And these D sections meant no capital investment, which meant low-paying rent for high-maintenance buildings because a lot of people who lived here had to travel for work, and there were no third places within these communities, so it was a place to pretty much just sleep, and that's it. No schools, no higher education. We're talking lower class. Middle class wasn't even here. So landlords would just abandon property since the rent coming in wasn't enough to maintain these buildings or their pockets. And this got me started on the whole dark patterns thing because I saw photos of this. This is what happens when dark patterns get out of control and go unseen for generations. Again, this is designed this way thanks to dark patterns and starting with multiple generations ago. I think that's why it's so hard for us to understand why communities live this way, are built this way, and why some people don't have the education or the capital that others do. It was before our time, and even the people living in these communities, most of them have passed away, and when it was happening, people didn't understand the real reason why it was happening. Sure, there were a few, but they were silenced. But highways and public transportation issues have been happening for years. Something newer is called hostile design or hostile architecture, which is another form of dark patterns. Benches in city centers have armrests breaking up the bench into 3 separate seats, the MTA taking away benches and just leaving wedges or leaning bars. These items are there to deter homeless people, but they also make it harder for people with disabilities or even elderly people to use. There's even these famous new designs for these subway vents. They kind of look like art or design pieces, but in reality, homeless people use to sit on these or sleep on these because a lot of heat comes out of them. Now, with this design, it's almost impossible for them to sit on. And yes, New York City has shelters, but sometimes it's not plausible for these people to seek them out and stay warm. And this is the only way they don't freeze to death. Benches are now being designed even more narrow or curvy so you can't lay on them or sit on them for more than 10 minutes. These designers, these planners, rather hide the problem of homelessness than actually solving it, and this is an unseen way of doing it to the general public. The city you live in is designed to be uncomfortable. So I know I went places with this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Now, my next video is going to be a little bit more lighter. I'm going to talk about a design house that's not really a design house, but you may have seen some of their products in the news recently. By recently, I mean maybe like 6 months ago. But I wanted to do a deep dive on their philosophy and what they're not saying when they do their interviews, and just an overview of the products they have out in the world because they're very reminiscent of Braun or the Bauhaus movement. And I'm dying to break that video down. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.